Hi, good afternoon. Welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm Subir Kodwal, Vice President of Agency and Government Relations here at Cision. I oversee the teams who manage relationships with the world's largest agencies and the current federal government clients of Cision. I'm excited to be moderating today's session, but before I introduce you to our fantastic panelists, I'd like to address a few housekeeping items to ensure an optimal viewing experience. First, you may have already noticed that you have the ability to rearrange, resize, or minimize the boxes on your screen to your liking. So feel free to adjust as needed. If you're experiencing technical difficulties, the bottom icon on the left side of your screen opens up to some troubleshooting tips. You may also submit your issue in the question box. We will have time for audience Q&A at the end of the hour, and I would encourage everybody to post your questions throughout the session. We'll be taking notes of it, and we'll then get to it towards the end of the session. So you may submit your questions in the question box to the left of the media player at any time during the session. You will also notice at the bottom of your screen a box that says Speak to an Expert, where you can let us know if you're interested in a free consultation with our in-house industry experts. Finally, the session is being recorded. All registered will receive an on-demand video to rewatch or share with their colleagues. So I had to read those. That's why I'm looking a little here and not there. But without further ado, let's meet our guests in alphabetical order, starting with Michael Brito, who is the Global Head of Analytics at Zeno Group. In addition to being a digital and analytics strategist and published author, Michael is a TEDx speaker, adjunct professor, an avid 49ers and Lakers fan with over 20 plus years of experience helping organizations break through the clutter and reach their audience with game-changing marketing and communication programs. At Zeno, Michael helps clients reach their target audience with laser-focused precision, the right story at the right time, in the right channel, and with the right media. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
Brent Diggins is a partner, managing director of performance and intelligence at Allison & Partners. Brent established and oversees the agency's performance and intelligence group, which includes the agency's analytics, data science, measurement, and research functions. During his 12 years with the firm, Brent has provided strategic data-driven solutions for some of the world's leading organizations, names you will recognize: Amazon, Google, Samsung, and Toyota. Last but not the least, Jennifer Paganelli-Schwartz serves as president of earned media and integration at Real Chemistry, a global health communications company focused on making the world a healthier place for all. Jen leads the firm's dedicated 60-person earned media team, bringing more than 20 years of experience serving as a trusted storytelling advisor to a range of healthcare organizations. Her team is comprised of passionate news junkies and many former reporters who support dozens of companies reimagining the future of medicine, from treatment and prevention to patient support and health equity. Welcome, Brent. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you.
All right. Well, so welcome again, everyone, and thank you for carving out time to review the latest state of the media report with us. Now in its 13th year, Cision's Global State of the Media Report remains the industry standard bearer for identifying trends in journalism and opportunities for public relations professionals to pursue. In this year's report, we looked at the challenges journalists face, the frustrations they deal with how they work. They value their relationship with the PR professionals, but there is a need and opportunity for them to provide even more value. A common theme that I have certainly noticed over the last few years is that the journalists are overworked and under-resourced. So we will be discussing some of these critical findings today with the three industry veterans and experts who have joined us. And I'm very keen to hear their perspective from an agency practitioner's point of view. So let's dive right into it. The first topic I'd like to discuss today is how PR pros can build a better relationship with journalists. And a little bit of statistics here for everybody. 18% of journalists we surveyed responded that their relationship with PR pros have become more valuable in the last year. But there's a significant number of journalists on the other end of the spectrum who don't feel the same. And before I turn it over to the panelists, very quickly, we asked the journalists what PR professionals can do to win over their trust and influence on media. And here are the top suggestions we received. Understand my target audience and what they find relevant, provide me with data and expert sources when I need them, and provide a list of upcoming stories they have planned to see what I'm interested in. So my first question is, how are you currently working to build more personalized relationships with journalists and media outlets? And I will direct that question to Michael, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I like to joke around with my colleagues and clients and say, I actually don't know any journalists. I've met them. I don't have any personal relationships except one, John Schwartz, and it's only because we're both Niner fans. But it's funny because I know a lot about specific journalists through data. And who knows, you'd come to a Cision panel today and learn about relationship advice, but I'm here to give you a little bit of it because in any relationship, you have to relate to the person or persons you're trying to build a relationship with. And so I think from my standpoint, there is a tremendous amount of data that's available to understand the affinities, the interests, the characteristics about individuals at an audience level, as well as an individual level. And so when I say that building relationships with a journalist is a priority, it is. And certainly the media relations strategists are on the phone with them, talking with them, conversing, pitching, providing resources. From my perspective, I like to look at it like, well, what is this journalist writing about? What have they written about? What are they writing about more that they're not that they haven't written about before? And what do they stop writing about based on what's top of mind for them? So from my perspective, I look at it from a data standpoint to understand what is the demand of the audience, right? And the demand of the audience, meaning the reporters, and then asking clients and or ourselves, are we meeting the supply of content and stories with the demand of the audience? So that's kind of my take on it. And I'm joking. I do know reporters, but that's not my job, is to build relationships with them. It's to give them, our media relations strategists, the tools and insights so they can make better pitches.
Thank you. Jennifer, Brent.
Yeah, I would love to build on that because unlike Brito, our team very much is on the front lines and have strong, long-standing relationships with the reporters, particularly covering healthcare. And that's critical. I'm with you. You need to know their audience inside and out. But if you don't know, and data can help, no doubt. But if you're not blending that with the art of communication, that starts with forging relationships that are grounded in trust and maintaining those relationships over time. Data alone is not going to get you there. It's an important part, but again, you've got to have the people aspect too. I've been doing this 20 years. My team, we have a lot of former journalists. Media relations done well should be a strategic function, grounded by relationships. Hands down. If you're not working with a team that has those relationships, you might want to think twice. They're really, really critical now more than ever. So that's my 2 cents. Brent, what do you think?
Yeah, I think exactly what you guys said. I think there's a couple other currencies at play, and one is speed. So everything is moving so fast. I don't know if agencies' internal functions are moving at the pace that the media has changed. Largely driven by speed. So we found a lot of relationship building is being able to provide content, data in a quick manner, whether it's a trend, something like that. So that currency of speed, I think, helps build relationships because it helps them do their job the way they need to do it in today's media world.
Yeah, I think what I picked up there, and I completely agree, is the relationship aspect of it. Any job that we're doing today, it's the relationship is the foundation of it. So if you have a good relationship with your audience or your peers or your customers, it just gets easier to talk to them and listen to them and also exchange information. So yeah, I completely agree there. And I think you already answered some of this, but let me ask this again. Where do you see opportunities for PR firms to use these findings? I'm going to start with Michael again.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I mean, and let me just preface this. Relationships are important, but that's not what I do at the agency. So I'm giving intelligence and insights into who are the top reporters driving, coverage, volume, and engagement and impact across, around 5G or healthcare or consumer, marketing. And so I think that is still important because that is the tipping point, right? That is what's going to help us craft the right language, the right pitch, help our clients write the most keyword driven headlines,
Yes.
the content. So all of that is important because, again, when we look at this from a visibility standpoint, right? We are on the phone with clients, we're talking with reporters, the teams are doing that. But to do it effectively and to break through the 50,000 emails that they get every single day, you need to write the perfect subject line, as an example. So I think from an agency standpoint in general, I think from my, again, my standpoint, data is important, right? And that coupled with, media relations experts who do have those previous relationships at the outlet level, at the reporter level, are always going to be important. And combining those to craft a story that is, again, going to be relevant to the audience, but also in alignment with the narrative and any particular messaging points that you have.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, I think the marriage of the data and the science aspect to the relationship is critical. And I think that's what we're all saying. It takes, to be a real storytelling sleuth, you need both. And you have to customize based on that data. No one size fits all. I'm sure everyone on this line would agree with that. If you find yourself, sending reporters the same shell email, shame on you. Take the time to customize, take the time to do your homework. What are they writing about? And yes, data can show you that, and that's awesome, but you've got to also do some of the work yourself. Read their past coverage, follow them on social media. Don't pitch them there, but follow them, engage, show that you're making a real interest and you're playing the long game, not just a transactional one-off. That's what builds trust over time, much like any relationship. And I also think, understanding, the audience inside and out shows the reporter you're taking that time and you're taking their time seriously, which I think in our day and age is more important now than ever.
Agree.
Brent, anything you'd like to add to that?
I think that, just asking the question, our organization set up to be able to provide data, with third-party data being limited in some ways, really leaning into that first-party data. So as a PR function, do you have access to that first-party data so you can uncover those trends and bring the stories? Because I think no matter what, those two top currencies are always going to be story and relationship. We have these other elements like content, speed, and data, like we talked about. But I think that data side, unlocking first-party data so you can bring that story. And again, I think my personal opinion is a story can trump anything. You don't have to have a relationship. You have a great story. You can move right past that relationship phase if you don't have it. But I just ask everybody, are you working towards getting that first-party data, being able to unlock it? And again, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, do that in a quick manner.
That's great. And Brent, when you say the first party data, you're referring to the data associated with your end clients who you might be working with a page or a campaign for that. Okay, so know your customer basically, right? Know your client inside out, so that you're pitching a story to the journalist about, something to do with this customer. You have all the answers and facts. You've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's.
Organizations are sitting on mountains of data that they aren't necessarily using, obviously for business decisions, but are they fully utilizing it for communications? Probably not as best as we could as an industry. So again, just in my opinion, could we start to explore that a little bit more? So when we tell those stories, we have, hey, my customer base is doing this, or this is what we're seeing. I think that's an interesting place to go.
Yeah, I love where you're going with that, Brent. Oh, go ahead, Brito.
No, please.
I was going to say, I think building on that, we've got to do a better job as an industry training our next generation storytellers on the validity of using data, how that can help them be more effective. I'll give you an example. Our earned media team, we were traditional 7 years ago when I joined the organization, straight up pitching, relationships, etc. But we realized that data, if we didn't get on the data train, we were going to miss out. And so we actually did trainings, and we still do trainings for all of our media relations experts about how we can use agile analytics to inform everything. Brito, you mentioned a few points, the subject line, the language we're using in pitches, and that has made us more precise storytellers. And I think that is really it's helping to try to make reporters' lives easier, so they're not getting pitches that just simply don't make sense.
Yeah, if I just chime in really quick on that, we did a project recently where understanding kind of using software reviews. So understanding what certain customers within a particular job function and industry, how they were rating different software. And we did a pretty large text analysis on that and fed that data into the client so they can understand the pain points. whether it's within the healthcare vertical or government or PubSec or telecom, and then using that to say, here's what your customers are saying, and here's why they're not buying your product, and here's why they're buying your competitor. And so giving that that insight and intelligence to clients so that they can start to frame their messaging. But then that's also a hook for the reporter, because if you can talk to the reporter and say, well, we're reading from customer reviews, customers are saying this and customers are saying that, and here's how we are addressing that through innovation or messaging or whatever, that is, it kind of serves two purposes. It's getting that, customer kind of insight to the reporter, and then actually changing your business based on what your customers are saying and why they're not buying.
Yes, and it's interesting how the industry or customers have transformed into, and you use this word, traditional pitching to data-driven communications. We hear that every day in and day out from our agency partners, but also our end clients, corporate customers. They want to target the right audience to see if their product or their white paper is being bought or read by the audience that they want to target. So that's a great point there, Brito. And Jennifer, let me ask you another question. You said that traditional pitching used to be 7 years ago. Now it's a little bit more kind of using smart data to make smart decisions, to do smart pitching. Are there any other best practices that you would like to share with our audience today?
For sure. I mean, I think first and foremost, earned media will always be foundational to a communications strategy. We can all agree on that. But sometimes earned media and earned pitching is not the answer to a client's challenge. At Real Chemistry, we only service clients in the healthcare space. Their challenges are very unique in a highly regulated industry. Sometimes the story they may want to tell is a better fit for a really engaging piece of video content that's placed on their social channels versus a pitch to a reporter who's busy covering a lot of other breaking news and features. So that's a best practice to stop yourself. Is earned media the answer? Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. And that's where bringing in other experts, your social media colleagues, your data analysts, to brainstorm another way to tell that story and get it out there to the right channel. We've now got tools where we can do that much more effectively. And that takes the pressure off of earned media to a degree as well. So you can save the really special pitches that, for the right reporter.
Absolutely. Brent, Brito, anything you'd like to add to the best practices?
I think things have just become more difficult. That's the consistent feedback we get across the board for our earned media practitioners. So, thinking of other ways, like Jennifer is alluding to present stories. Is it a survey, for example, to drive media relations, or our own piece of content? I think those things are playing more than ever. So investing in some ancillary efforts to help drive media relations is something I've seen change a lot and being considered best practice now.
I remember years ago, I had a client, and we would pitch these ideas to them around, if they weren't getting coverage or they weren't getting, seeing the impact using paid media. And I remember, 5-10 years ago, clients would be like, oh, we're earned media. We don't do that. And I find it fascinating that, there are some people who still have that mindset because they're kind of, they put themselves in a box, and surround themselves with, we just do earned. And, that is shifting, and it's been shifting for quite a while. And, but little things like, small investments in targeting a custom audience list on Twitter of all the top tech reporters. Let's just say that there's 5,000 of them, and promoting content in not a press release, but good piece of content. Maybe it's a video explaining what it is. That works. And it's not, and it's paid media, right? But it's not like you're spending $10,000 a month. You're not even spending $10,000. You're spending $1,500 to target a very finite group of journalists, and putting your content in their feed. So I think that is a small little tactic that still works today. That oftentimes some folks will be like, well, it's kind of like that's not within our our playing field, so we need to ask the paid media team or ask the media team to do that.
I think you're raising a really interesting point. I mean, paid, we have so many more levers we can pull now, and I hate using that phrase, but it's true. And to be able to target, reporters are people too. Doctors are people too, patients are people too, and I think sometimes we forget about that. So being able to target content to them that they may find of great use, Using data to inform that, sure, that's very efficient. And that's a great way to reach them. The key is the content of service. How? And all content's created the same. Not all paid media is created the same. It's really got to work together to work really effectively and break through. But I'm with you. Our clients are much more comfortable with paid media and social amplification than they were even a couple years ago. I wonder why. I mean, maybe that comes in a regulated industry, seeing other companies do it compliantly, but it's definitely a trend that will continue. I hope it does.
Yeah, absolutely. When I think about it, there's so much content that's being fed to the world out there, right? On Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, or then the news publications as well. How do you make sure that your content stands out and doesn't get buried under a mountain of other content? And I think paid media, using tactically and strategically to position that valuable content that you have spent considerable dollars on, but also that this is something that your audience need to see. I think it does go a long way. So we're also seeing a trend shifting from, we don't do paid media, we're just earned media, to, all right, I think we do earn media, but perhaps we need to layer a thin layer of paid media on top. That's a great point. So shifting gears here, so we provided some best practices to our audience. What can they do to build the relationship with the journalist? All right, so we have a foot in the door. We have built a relationship with the journalist. They have been receptive to your pitches in the past. The trick now is to maintain that in the long run, right? How do you keep this going? So let me hear your thoughts on that how can PR pros better serve journalists? What are some of the tips or things they should bear in mind? And I'm referring to journalists you're already engaged with, and you want to make sure that they stay engaged with you.
Support them. Use social media to support them. Follow them on social media. Read their articles. Did they write a book? Buy it. I've got right next to me the Pete Loftus book, The Messenger, that he just published. I'm reading this because I'm very interested in it, but because I've got a good relationship with Pete and I want to share my thoughts on the book and I want to support him in that way. Social media is democratizing that opportunity. Comment, look at their articles, see who they're connected to. And that's also a very interesting way data can help us uncover kind of the intricacies between a reporter and maybe other experts, KOLs, et cetera. But that is such an easy way to maintain the relationship without annoying them.
Yeah, and I'd say, with that, there's a lot of opportunity to interact with journalists in forums, right? A lot of them are part of professional industries or organizations. I think people are really looking for authenticity. There used to be a wall between, the PR person and the journalist, and but with social media, the ability to interact and do the simple things, like Jennifer said, buying a book or, helping them out if they're in trouble, something like that, I think goes a long way. A comment on a wedding or anniversary, that kind of stuff, it still goes a long, long way.
Yeah, that's more crucial, to engage without being annoying when you don't need something from the reporter, right? That's just kind of like relationship 101, so that way when you do have a pitch and a story that's breaking, maybe that you're going to them under embargo with, they're gonna read that email, right? You've built that trust. They know you're not wasting their time. So again, to be able to maintain that network in between when you have news and are working with them directly is really important. You also have to, this sounds simple, but subscribe to the outlets. Many of them are paid now. Support journalism in that way, particularly, local journalism, which is still, which is still highly credible and influential. Those are small ways where you can really put your money where your mouth is, so to say, and walk the walk.
I love that. Relationship 101, support them, right? So it should be a two-way street, not you're reaching out to them when you want something out of them, but you're also engaged with their content, like Brent mentioned, in forums and commenting on it in social media. That's how you continue building trust and credibility in the long run. So those are two great points: support and engaging in forums. Brito, anything you would like to add to that?
Yeah, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to get corny just for 1 second. Early in my career, I remember hearing a speaker talk about this concept called reciprocal altruism. And it's actually a biology term, but what it meant and the way that he contextualized it was that marketers, communicators, business people need to give without any expectation of receiving anything in return. And so I always took that with me in my career. And from a marketing perspective and analytics standpoint, that is kind of the way that I kind of approach engagement, whether it's with a customer, whether with a client, or in this case, a reporter. And I remember reading another report a couple of years ago about how journalists are looking at the performance of their stories. So, and a lot of them will only write a story if they think it's going to perform well, right? And that's whether that's performances on the outlet, website, the outlet channel, or their personal channels. And so with the concept of reciprocal altruism, I've in some instances, I have partnered and talked to certain reporters and giving them data on their audience, which they probably don't have access to, right? They don't have the tools, maybe they don't have the expertise, but giving them either performance level data of reports or articles that they've written, or just general audience data, who their audience is, what different personas are involved. That goes a long way. And working at Zeno, and certainly not pitching reporters for clients, but giving that, passing off that relationship to my internal colleagues has happened a couple times in the past. But I thought it was just an interesting way to look at and providing support to the point being made to journalists, whether it is subscribing to a newsletter or just giving them information about either their performance or audience that they may not have.
Bravo. I mean, again, that's service storytelling at its finest. We've got to be of service. And how can we help our clients be of service to reporters? Sometimes, yes, I'm pitching a client news item, for them, but, companies are publishers in their own right. They could be making it easier to find content and information on their websites. We should be reimagining online newsrooms and making sure they're visually appealing, they're scrollable, it's quick, it's highly humanized. There's so many more things beyond just how and when you engage with a reporter that organizations can do. Because again, if what we're ultimately doing here, and in healthcare, it's very clear, we want people to find the right information from credible sources when they need it most, when they're making life and death decisions about their health, whether it's cancer, COVID, or any other disease. So again, I think these all work together to make sure the right information is out there. It's easy for different people to find it, and it's in a language that they can access. No jargon. It's not complicated. And I don't think we're there yet. I think we've got a lot more work to do with our clients to get there.
Well, these are three great, important tips: supporting the journalists, engaging with them in forums or social media, but also proactively giving information. That is so good. Thank you for sharing that. I'd encourage our audience to send questions, any questions that you may have that we'll cover towards the end. I can see there are a few questions that have trickled in, but again, reminder, please submit your questions if you'd like to ask our panelists today. All right, so going back to the journalists and the relationship between PR pros and the journalists, our study found that the journalists, they have to plan their stories or reports on the same day. Yes, a lot of them do. But many are planning weeks or months ahead. 3 in 10 journalists say they would benefit from having a list of upcoming stories that the PR pros have planned, as it gives them the lead time they need to slot a potential story idea into their editorial calendar. For somebody kind of on the outside looking in the PR industry, because we work with the PR industry, we aid the PR practitioners with the tools and technologies. That never occurred to me if I'll say PR press release, because that's what I see most often. But if your teams are actually reaching out to the journalist with the upcoming editorial calendar, if it's this customer, this is when we're going to do X, Y, Z, they have the data points or the sources readily available. So very keen to hear your thoughts. Whoever wants to go first.
I think one interesting thing there is, I think how things have been reimagined since COVID. And I'll give one example. In the auto industry, the automotive industry used to rely on auto shows, right? These big, high spend events where everyone would come and compete for share of earned media. But, since COVID, a lot of organizations have just decided to do their own events. Certainly something we saw more in tech, but almost every industry is foregoing those, larger events and bringing journalists in to show them what's coming in the future. So I think that was one interesting trend that, I think is here to stay, of organizations going away from maybe these large competitive events and bringing in the journalists to show them the future product roadmap or something that may be coming out. I think it's a great way for organizations to think about engaging media in different ways.
I love that, particularly as we thaw out from COVID. Some reporters are interested in getting that type of access. Something we've learned, though, is not all of them want to be together in a cattle call. Some of them want one-on-one attention. They want their own private tour of an R&D facility where the COVID vaccines are being made, for example. They don't want to be one of a dozen reporters at a press conference. Those days are long gone. So to the degree we can continue to give access to the voices, the science, the people creating that science, the better. And especially if we could do it one-on-one, which is so they have the chance to ask questions, wrap their brains around some complicated issues, particularly in healthcare, and get what they need for a future story now or down the road.
Absolutely. Pre-COVID, we would be having this discussion, hopefully in person. But yes, the times have changed and we have to adapt with post-COVID life. So we used to participate a lot in the automotive shows. I hear you loud and clear, Brent. The automotive industry is now evolving on how to make sure that they are showcasing their new cars or new technology to the journalist in a way that suits the reporters and the journalists. So meeting them where they want us to meet them. Rita, would you like to add anything to that piece?
No, I would just be repeating what they've already said. They covered it. Yeah.
Great. Well, so I'm going to switch gears to social media, which I know we discussed earlier. And what I'd like to hone in on is media's relationship with social media. The 2022 report cemented that most journalists use social media for professional reasons to network and promote their work, to engage with their audience, and to source and verify the information. I think three things we actually talked about in your best practices as well, so bravo there. But many are open to connecting with PR pros on social media. However, many are opposed to the idea. 1 in 3, 34% explicitly said they don't prefer it, and 12% will even go so far as to block a PR pro who tries to slide into their DMs. So I know this is an area of interest to you as well, Brito. So I'm going to ask this question to you. How can agencies take advantage of their access to the journalists through social media, knowing the last thing they want is to be pitched on social media?
I'm sorry, I forgot if you were. Oh, go ahead, Brito. Yeah, I didn't hear who you were pointing the question to.
I'm just laughing. I mean, I'm not a reporter, but I've been blogging for like 15 years or something, and I get someone put me on this list, and for the last like 12 years, I've been pitched things that make no sense to me. Like, why are you sending me an email, or why are you sending me a DM about this product or service in an industry that I don't really care about or know about? And so I think that obviously it does happen to reporters 10 times than what happens to me. I think the problem is that it goes back to taking all of this that we've talked about today, right? The relationships, the providing value, being a utility for reporters, and applying that to how you do it on social media. You're not, and then you won't make those mistakes of having a junior person. No offense to, interns and, double AEs, right? They're learning, and sometimes they may learn the hard way and get called out by a journalist publicly. I've seen it happen, and I actually laughed out loud about it. But so I think a lot of times when you're leaving your media outreach to inexperienced or junior people who may not have read the Cision report, or understand the fact that reporters don't necessarily, there are certain reporters that don't want to be pitched to. In some cases in their bio, they will say open to pitches or open to signals or whatever. And then that you can go ahead and pitch them a story. So I think it's just, from an agency standpoint, it's training, it's making sure that people like make sure you have the right name, make sure you're pitching the right reporter, all the basics, right? And doing it the right way. I laugh today because I get pitched these things and it's hilarious. And I think a lot of reporters are irritated by that because they have a deadline. They need sources, they need information. And to read through 15, 20, 30, 100 DMs is time consuming. So
and
when
annoying. Let's be real.
Yeah.
So annoying. Never slip into a reporter's DMs unless they have specifically told you it is okay. That is just a universal. Again, reporters are people too. They're likely using the social media to amplify their stories, spark a debate based on that, get two experts to debate something, for all to see. And again, it goes back to the relationships. If you have to rely on slipping into a reporter's DMs to get their attention, check yourself. You're doing something wrong. Okay. And I would really rethink your whole strategy because it is so easy for you to get unfollowed on social. And worst case scenario, like Brito said, get your spot blown up by an influential reporter. And now that harms your reputation, not just of you and your organization, but of your client. That looks bad. It's a bad look. So use your brain, start with an email. And again, that goes into the follow-up conversation, Don't follow up 100 times. That's annoying. Again, that's like human relationship 101, right? But I think, sometimes clients want the feedback and they might be pressuring us, but that's where we as media relations strategists need to educate our clients and kind of set that expectation that, hey, a reporter may not respond. That means they may not be into it. Let's try to tell that story a different way. I think those are some additional key considerations.
Yeah, I think, something again you said, Jennifer, like you wouldn't slide into somebody's DM just because, anybody else except journalists, right? So you wouldn't do that to any strangers you're talking to online. So why to journalists? Like treat them as people too. I like that a lot. And for any of our audience members, if you've tried reaching out to Brito to get your content in his blog, now you know. Please make sure you've done your research. Brett, is there anything you would like to add to that?
No, I think Brito and Jennifer said it really well.
Perfect. So what advice would you give to somebody who is new to the PR industry? And by that, I mean, fairly new, still learning the ropes. I think you covered, treat them as people, but also socialize with them in social media, follow and engage with them in forums. Don't pitch. Reporters are not there to be pitched. Any other advice that you would like to give to our audience today, if they're fairly
new? Get out there and meet them. Get out of your desk, get out of the Zoom, and go meet them. Again, you're not taking them out for a 3-hour dinner. No, hey, let's go grab a quick coffee. I'm in town. I'm in Boston. Would love to hear what you got coming down the pike. Again, you want to make sure that reporter, you're building on that relationship, and hopefully they're walking away feeling, gosh, that was time really well spent. I have a better idea of where what the news Jen's clients are going to be announcing, for the next quarter. I don't think we do that a lot. I think we use social media as a crutch, but those kind of old school traditional means are ways that we can put faces to names and show them, hey, I'm here to help you and you're here to help me. I think it's really important. We've got to get up and get out and see them.
Yeah, and I also think that, if the journalist and if you are attending an event and the journalist is going to be there, I think you could reach out to them via social media. Hey, I know you're attending this. I'll be there. Would love to connect with you for 2 minutes, I think. But I like the idea. In fact, I love the idea, which is what we preach our teams to get out there and meet your customers, no longer just sitting in front of the Zoom or giving a phone call. So in complete agreement with you.
I think one other very simple thing is being able to deliver what's promised, especially now, as we see in the survey results. They have 5 or 6 beats. They're pressed for time. We talked about speed earlier. There's nothing that I've seen more turn off a potential relationship or story than not being able to deliver on what's promised in a pitch, whether that's a piece of data, content, a spokesperson time, right? That feedback really sours journalist relationship.
Yeah, and be available if they're following up with you for data. So you send them the pitch and stuff, but if they're following up with you for a source or data, make yourself available. Well said, Brent. Go ahead, Jennifer.
No, I mean, I think that's excellent. It all gets back to how can you be of service to the journalist. And I would challenge us as communicators to think about diversity as well when we're, making offers to reporters about the types of experts that we can offer, their background. They can really use our help diversifying their list of experts. They can do that on social media and source there, but we can really play an important role to make sure that those voices are front and center. So I would just encourage all of us to make sure diversity in thought, background, is front of mind for your pitches too.
Absolutely. That's a great point. So here's an interesting data point for you. I was completely blown away by this. Facebook is actually media's most preferred social platform globally. For some reason, I've always imagined it to be Twitter because maybe I'm on Twitter and I follow journalists there. But I was kind of, not shocked, but kind of, surprised to see that. But then, further drilling down into the details, found out that Twitter actually does share the top spot with Facebook in North America. It ties with LinkedIn as the second most often used platform in European markets. However, in the APAC markets, Instagram is second to Facebook, and journalists are as likely to use WhatsApp as LinkedIn. Am I the only person in the room who was surprised to read all this? What are your thoughts and reactions?
Facebook? God, I haven't logged into Facebook in years. That blew me away too. I'm curious, was the question framed around the personal usage of social media or as it relates to the work that they do?
Professional. So they use Facebook the most for professional reasons. So some of the reasons they said was to publish or promote content, to interact with my audience, to network. So professionally, they look at Facebook, or we found out that Facebook is actually number one globally.
Fascinating. I'm a little surprised by that, but I mean, I guess it shows you that reporters and journalists are putting their content and their stories where people are living their lives. Brito might not be living his life on Facebook. I'm not either. I keep an eye on it, but I'm not engaging as much as I may on Twitter or LinkedIn. But we're not everyone in the United States or around the globe. So again, I think that's an important point for us as communicators to keep in mind. Is our content and our message clear? Is it simple? And are we using channels to reach our audience where they're already living their lives, whether that's on Facebook or elsewhere? It's an interesting finding.
And WhatsApp. I wouldn't want anybody unknown to send me a pitch on WhatsApp, but
what's funny about that though, and I agree with WhatsApp. You were going to say, sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I mean, here's the thing, like maybe, these reporters, and again, I don't know if it was broken down by, business, media, tech, health, whatever, trade, but like, maybe that's where they get the most engagement on their content. Maybe they spent years building a community there and it works for them. So I think that's, I think to the point of, and Facebook's an anomaly from a data standpoint, right? As is LinkedIn, it's really difficult, almost impossible to pull, general data. I mean, performance data of your brand's content, you can, but like, I don't know. It's just, I find it to be interesting and I'm curious, if Cision, maybe this is a different webinar, like maybe, are you guys looking at that now and thinking about ways to be able to pull in Facebook data, more, and I know there is some there, but like actual post level data to see and track story pickup and, journalists, et cetera. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think we're constantly evolving with the times, but also I know that our head of content licensing is always looking for ways to partner with the social media, TikTok out there, Facebook and all. But I think what happened in 2016, and I'm trying to remember Cambridge Analytica, what happened then, that has kind of, turned the thinking away from publishing data versus controlling data. If you think about Facebook, they're already under so much, pressure from the Congress there for privacy and stuff. But we are looking, we're, as you might be aware, our sister company Brandwatch and us worked very closely with Twitter. We have access to all of their data, but Facebook and Instagram would be good to crack because, like we see now, that's where journalists are going to socialize as well. And we definitely want to see how are they, promoting or talking about a certain topic or brand. But yeah, that was an interesting tidbit that I wanted to share. Well, we'll take some questions now, if you guys are ready. And thank you to the audience for sending these questions. So the first one is related to social media. And I'm sorry, I'm reading it here, so that's why I'm not looking. In pitches, how important is it to connect one story to a topic that's trending on social media?
Critical. That's relevance. That's what's going to convince this reporter that it's newsworthy, that they've got to write it right now. And I think when you're writing that pitch, you have to explain, hey, this is what we're seeing on Twitter. This is taking off. Here's how I can make it easy for you to potentially cover that as part of a larger story. I think being able to do that and show them that you are tracking is great. Listen, sometimes they're going to be able to drop everything and do that story. Sometimes they won't. But I think using social media insights is appreciated.
I mentioned this earlier about the, oh, sorry, Brent, go ahead.
I was just going to say again, that currency of speed, I think, really plays into that. I think also rounding it out, I think it's a little light just to go and say, hey, this is trending on social media, therefore you should write about it. You need, again, some first party data, some more context to really frame it around your client. So I don't think just trending is enough. Just rounding it out with other data points from your own organization is huge to make that type of function work.
That's a really good point. I mentioned this earlier, the idea of supply and demand. It's a model that we use to kind of frame our analytics. And when I think about the demand of the audience, right, the audience could be customers, it could be reporters, it could be a specific media outlet. Providing data, providing relevancy is understanding what is in demand of the audience and then supplying that demand with your content. And I think that is key. I think agility is certainly important as well, because it's more about not just what's trending, but it could be this other outlet is writing about this. It's generating a lot of engagement. How can you frame a pitch that says to this reporter, here's our take on it. Here's, and by the way, maybe your outlet wrote a public, an article about this last month that generated this much engagement, this much impact. So adding a few, sprinkling on some data points to tell a story in that pitch, in my opinion, be successful. Yeah.
Yeah, and giving the reporter a couple ways to think about the pitch. One way is, hey, reporter, I want you to cover this story, write it, interview my experts, etc. Well, maybe they don't have time for that, but it's still it's a timely story that should get told. Being able to quickly pivot and say, listen, I've got an expert. They're willing to pen a bylined article right now. We can keep it to 500 words or whatever, and you guys can post it tonight. Again, you have to understand the outlets and the different ways in, so you can adapt quickly if they can't, drop everything to write a story that you might be pitching.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you all mentioned that if it's relevant to what topic is trending on social media and that's what you're writing about, then absolutely, with the data points, go ahead. But I always think about it as, yes, if it's checks all those boxes, maybe, installing a little bit of FOMO that if the journalist is not looking at the story, which is associated with topics they cover, and it's also trending with social media, other outlets might be looking at it. So just another way to kind of, get your point of view across. Jennifer, you mentioned training about your staff. So we got a question, what kind of training are you providing to your staff?
Oh, yeah, we do all sorts of trainings. The beauty of having such a large dedicated healthcare media team is that we've got a lot of former journalists and on-air reporters from CNBC, local media around the country, ABC News. So every other month, it's kind of train the trainers. They're storytellers now on my team, but they tell us and educate us about trends impacting news outlets that we need to keep in mind moving forward. We also we do agile analytics training for all of our earned media colleagues so they can understand how certain types of data can help understand our audience better from a segmenting perspective, but understanding the whole universe of news outlets that a client might consider reaching out to. So if our team doesn't have that information and they're not trained and they're keeping it old school, it's not going to fly. We need our storytellers to be modern, to be 2 steps ahead, and to also keep an eye on what's going on outside of healthcare, because I think healthcare kind of plays catch up a little bit, but innovation and storytelling is happening in other sectors. So again, we have to carve out time to take a look at those efforts, and then we bring it back to our team and we dissect it. Hey, how can we learn from that? That's an interesting way to formulate a newsroom or a pitch. So it's a constant learning environment.
Sorry, go ahead, Brito.
I was going to say in 2020, my team launched a global analytics certification program, partnered with HR, put it into our learning management system. It is now a requirement for all employees. It's 16 modules, 30 minutes per session. We do a walkthrough of Cision. We do walkthrough of Brand Watch. We do definitions and terms and how to write effective Booleans, 16 modules. And I think, I don't want to misspeak, but couple, maybe 300 of our agency employees, I don't know what percentage that is, have completed it. So, we're thinking about version 2.0 now. So I think, training is important. Making it easy is important so that when you can, self-paced, modularized, go in, learn how to write an advanced Boolean query, or learn what text analysis is and how that's different from social listening. Like all that is going to be important, and it benefits the end user, whether you're an healthcare intern in New York or a B2B tech, media strategist in San Francisco. It's meant to help the entire agency.
Would
That's
love
awesome.
to work with you on Training 2.0.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I love what you're saying about on demand, making it easy for employees to be able to get that information. We know they're hungry for it. I think that's awesome. And that's the way of the future. Also, are we bringing reporters in to talk to us about, new, some of the strains they're under, or new opportunities for storytelling? All these things working together, I think, helps train people in the art and science of storytelling, which is not something you're going to get, with one module, but over time and all taken together, it helps to increase our own media IQ.
Well, I'll tell you that until 12 years ago, before I joined this industry, I was not aware of the term storyteller. So this was like an alien term to me. But in the last 12 years, I've lived, I breathe, I drink, I sleep, I see storytelling. And I think the important piece that you mentioned there is train the trainers, storytellers training the upcoming staff on how to tell an effective storytelling. It is an art, and I think we do that on a day-to-day basis. So very, very glad to see that's something that's happening at your agency, and also Brito and Brent at your agencies as well. So one of my favorite questions, because I'm always curious about this, but this has come from the audience and not me. Do any of you think TikTok will be the next big network journalists use for their day-to-day work?
I think it has the potential to be for certain industries, of course. I don't think it's going to be a blanket like a Facebook, but we can see, it's surprising that it didn't show up there, but I don't know if, brands are mature enough across the board to show up in some of the state of the media results. So I think, your travel, your hospitality, we're seeing, the Instagram and TikToks take over, slowly eat into Google's search business, right? Well, people are looking to those and searching those more. So I think naturally it will start to evolve, but might take a while for certain industries because the content or the participation from some industries just isn't there yet.
It's fun to watch, though, because I'm with you. My first instinct is like, oh, hell no, that's not going to be the primary place. But, think about it. If you're a reporter and your goal is you have to make sure the content you're putting out is reaching the audience and being of service, well, you've got to be tracking on those channels, right? If that's where the kids are is TikTok. Okay, look at that. Is that an opportunity for me to place a story? Think about COVID, getting information about vaccines out there, correct information, and all of that. Some companies were bold and they did go to TikTok, not as their primary communications kind of strategy, but as one piece of it. Again, if you're trying to reach an audience, you got to be all the places they may be living their life. TikTok certainly could be one of them. Is my grandmother on there? No, I've got to reach her a different way, right? But you have to fish where the fish are. And sometimes, it'll be TikTok today and another platform tomorrow. But the key is you've got to consider them.
My grandma's on TikTok.
She's way cooler than mine.
Yeah, way cooler than me. I don't use TikTok. That's awesome. Brito, would you like to add anything to that? TikTok?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I use, I do a lot of B2B and tech work, and you'd be surprised at the volume of conversation related to very technical topics like DevOps or AI ops, ML, things like that. It's there. It's there. And so, I think if the audience is there, by sector, healthcare, there's a lot of physicians on TikTok as well, giving, not advice, but tips and things like that. So I think if the audience is there, then I think reporters will get there. I don't know if they're there yet, but they will.
Right. While I've got you, Brito, another question that came through is, you mentioned pushing clients into paid media targeting journalists, and I'll open it up to the group. Do you and your clients think that there is earned media value in premium publisher article placements?
Yeah, I mean, there's long-term, there's search value, right? So if you think about, whether you pay for a placement or you get, you pitch a great story, it lives in Google forever. And so, it may not have for a savvy, B2B buyer or consumer, they're going to know the difference. But, again, longer term, when people are searching for your business or your industry, product, service, et cetera, category, that whether it's paid or not, it's going to show up and it's going to appear in Google, and that's key. So that's my perspective on it. I think, I don't think you lead with that. Certainly if there's a story that you need to be told and nobody's picking up on it, either reevaluate the pitch, reevaluate the story, or just pay for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Amazing. And we'll get one final question in, because I can't believe it's already almost 2 p.m. here in New York. How often do your clients reach out to non-journalist influencers? Which metrics do you look at when engaging with influencers?
You mean like contributor to Forbes? There's like thousands of them. I don't know. I mean, we do a lot of influencer work, and, there's a lot of, maybe this is a new webinar about the consumer influencer is one thing. I think the B2B influencers and even the healthcare influencers who are not, traditional journalists, I think there's an interesting dynamic and shift happening in the marketplace. And so, we do deal with that, and it's interesting. And I'm very opinionated on this, so I'm not going to get too vocal about it, but it's there. It should be dealt with and managed. I don't think that you replace your traditional media outreach engagement with that of an influencer. I think it's in addition to what you do.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think there is a huge opportunity. Influencers are critical, particularly micro influencers, because again, if we're thinking about an audience, they're not just consuming information and living their lives by reading the New York Times. They're consuming and living their lives many places. At Real Chemistry, we acquired an amazing company, Star Power, and their whole tagline is Hollywood meets healthcare. And so they partner with our influencer experts to, delineate between celebrities that maybe want to share their voice for a cause, a health cause, a patient influencer, someone living with it, or a lifestyle expert who is influential within their own sphere. And again, if you think about that, and their audience may not be huge, but it's super impactful and engaging, and we know we're going to give them the information they want, that's magical. And when that's done right and compliantly, but it has to be part of a larger communication strategy that's informed by data. So again, having the vetting and the data to vet some of these influencers, critical.
I just chime in on the measurement side. The ANA just recently released a set of industry standards. Don't quote me on this, but generally it's awareness, engagement, and outcomes. So they're trying to put together some metrics to unify the industry a bit. So for that second part of the question, take a look at those, provide some good guidance overall.
Engagement, awareness, and outcomes.
I believe that's correct. I just read it a couple of days ago, but maybe loose terms, but that's generally correct.
Brilliant. Thank you, Brian. Well, I'd like to thank all of you, our panelists, for joining us today. I have enjoyed this conversation very much. Brito has already given us 2 ideas of webinars, so I look forward to continuing this conversation with you all.
Bring your grandma; she can host too, Brito.
Yeah, as a special guest, yes, do that. So we look forward to continuing this conversation in the future. And to our audience, thank you so much for joining the webinar. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did, and our panelists were very super engaged and informative information. I'd leave you with this thought. If you're interested in learning more about the findings from State of the Media report, we have provided a link to the report in the additional resources section. And if you would like to talk to our in-house industry experts, please let us know. You can simply type yes in the Speak to an Expert widget below, and someone will be reaching out to you. I thank all of you again for your time today. It was such a great conversation, and I'm glad we have it recorded, and we'll share the recording with your colleagues who could not attend. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.